Hello everyone, welcome to A Clear Perspective. I'm Serene. Yesterday, we talked briefly about the Supreme Court declining to hear several cases that challenged the 2020 election results. We will dive into this more today. In my view, when the Supreme Court made their decision, it marked the end of the separation of powers between the three branches of government. The media, Congress, and the Supreme Court have become political tools for the left. The Supreme Court's rulings are now based on political needs rather than the Constitution and the rule of law. This is really no different than the CCP's approach to base all judgments on the party's political needs. As we briefly mentioned yesterday, the Supreme Court had dismissed the remaining cases disputing the 2020 election. For the Pennsylvania case, the law states that any mail-in ballots received past election day are invalid. But the Pennsylvania Supreme Court took the liberty of changing the terms so that mail-in ballots can be counted up to 3 days after the election day. The Supreme Court's refusals demonstrated their attitude. They won't address any evidence regarding irregularities. The vote was 6-3. Out of the 6 justices who refused to review the case, 2 were appointed by Trump, Justices Kavanaugh and Barrett. Justice Clarence Thomas disagreed with this decision. He said in his statement, quote, "We failed to settle this dispute before the election and thus provide clear rules. Now we again fail to provide clear rules for future elections. The decision to leave election law hidden beneath a shroud of doubt is baffling. By doing nothing, we invite further confusion and the erosion of voter confidence." Justice Thomas also said, quote, "That is not a prescription for confidence. Changing the rules in the middle of the game is bad enough. Such rule changes by officials who may lack authorities to do so is even worse. When those changes alter election results, they can severely damage the electoral system on which our self-governance so heavily depends." Attorney Sidney Powell supported Justice Thomas by stating, quote, "Wise words. Justice Thomas dissenting from the Supreme Court's refusal to take the PA election case. The inaction from the Supreme Court will only encourage more abuse." Alito and Gorsuch filed a separate dissent, saying the court should have intervened. They wrote, "There is a strong likelihood that the state Supreme Court's decision violates the federal Constitution." Personally, I'm not surprised. When the Supreme Court rejected the Texas lawsuit on election irregularities, they offered a very odd explanation that Texas had no business in regulating other states. However, election fraud in other states could affect the outcome of the election, therefore making it the business of every state. But the Supreme Court did not seem to care whether their reasoning was logical. Instead, they simply forced all Americans to accept their decision without offering further explanations. So I'm not surprised that the Supreme Court hasn't even given an explanation this time around. They don't care about justice. Pennsylvania's Attorney General had urged the court to turn down the appeal because the election was over and the case was moot. This logic is absurd. By the same reasoning, there would be no point in reviewing a robbery since the person has already been robbed. The purpose of the court is to decide right and wrong. The judicial system not only punishes crimes that have been committed, but also prevents similar crimes from recurring. Not giving a conclusion would essentially admit that these behaviors can go unpunished. It would encourage people to continue abusing the system in the future. Since the Supreme Court turns a blind eye to these acts, the non-legislative bodies of each state will be able to change the election laws as they see fit in the future. Justice Thomas wrote, quote, These cases provide us with an ideal opportunity to address just what authority non-legislative officials have to set election rules, and to do so well before the next election cycle. The refusal to do so is inexplicable. I couldn't agree more with Justice Thomas' statement. The decision of the Supreme Court means two things. First, it is a fact that the Supreme Court has been infiltrated by the leftist ideology, and some of the conservative judges have been proven to be fake conservatives. Even if this series of lawsuits does not change the outcome of the election, it is necessary to clarify the powers and the responsibilities of non-legislative institutions in an election. Otherwise, there is no law to follow, and the future elections will end in chaos. Therefore, the only reason the Supreme Court ignores this is that the judges who rejected the case wanted to keep the loopholes in the system. Because Trump is likely to rise again in the next presidential election, the left and the justices want to keep these loopholes in place as a way to stop Trump in the future. Secondly, the Supreme Court's decision essentially destroyed the foundation of U.S. election law and destroyed the judicial independence that the United States once prided itself on. It may take a while for the impact of this decision to ripple through American society. The Supreme Court is the pillar of the U.S. judicial system. With this pillar askew, the judiciary at all levels will inevitably find themselves askew as well. This is the inevitable result of the judicial system being controlled by an extreme leftist ideology. In this sense, the United States is already starting to take the form of a totalitarian society. All judicial power is subordinate to the needs of an ideology. This ideology is the real ruler. This can be clearly seen in China, where the CCP has become a concrete representation of socialism and communism. But in the United States, because of the election system, the Democratic Party is not yet able to form a single-party dictatorship. Therefore, infiltrating and blackmailing Republican establishments become necessary. So, during the Obama and even Bush administrations, Democratic elections in the U.S. were mostly a guise. This slow transformation went unnoticed by people until Trump woke up Americans and the rest of the world. Trump's appearance almost seems predestined to stop the force that has been long corrupting America. Trump has revitalized America in his short 4-year term, but why is he attacked so viciously? It is because he is swimming against the tide. We can only imagine the pressure he is under. Aside from refusing to accept the election lawsuit, the Supreme Court also declined to halt the turnover of Trump's tax records to a New York prosecutor. This essentially enables the New York prosecutor to obtain 8 years of Trump's tax returns and other financial records. This ruling essentially enables the left to conduct a criminal investigation on Trump. With the Russia investigation and the 2 impeachments as examples, it is hard to say what this tax investigation may bring for Trump. On the surface, this is keeping with the rule of law. No one is above the law. But when these 2 rulings happen together, we see things in a different light. If Trump has violated the law, the court cannot shield him. But when Trump suffers from injustice, the court should not turn a blind eye either, right? What we can see is that when it is advantageous for political correctness, the law is enforced. When it isn't, there is no need to obey it. This partial law enforcement is essentially a type of persecution under the guise of law. Trump issued a statement in response, quote, "This investigation is a continuation of the greatest political witch hunt in the history of our country." I'm not sure if some of you noticed, but during the impeachment debate, the prosecutors fabricated evidence 3 times. Since the tax investigation is undisclosed, how can we be sure if there will be no fabrication of evidence in this investigation? In the past, people in the U.S. still had considerable confidence in closed investigations. But today, when even the Supreme Court can go rogue in public, how can people still have trust in a closed investigation? In other words, the investigation may just be another plot against Trump to stop him from returning to the White House. On that note, Merrick Garland, Biden's nominee for Attorney General, said he hasn't thought about whether illegal border entry should remain a crime in his confirmation hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's obvious that this nominee believes very much in political correctness. What would be the outcome if such a person is in charge of the investigation? When a system cannot even guarantee the basic rights of the president, it's impossible to guarantee the rights of any ordinary person. This is why we say that the United States has in fact completed the initial stage of ideological totalitarianism. But Trump never gave up. He is still preparing to take back America in 2024, as we mentioned yesterday. Even though the public support for Trump has never been the problem, but does Trump have a chance to win back the presidency when the entire government is corrupt? In the 2020 election, Trump set a record for the highest number of votes received by an incumbent president. After Biden's term, I believe it is possible that there will be even more people supporting Trump. However, if the entire country is indoctrinated and controlled by the left in the next few years, it's entirely possible that they will repeat what we saw in the 2020 election. Let's move on to another lawsuit. On Monday, Dominion, the voting machine company, filed a $1.3 billion lawsuit against Mike Lindell, the CEO of MyPillow. They claim that Mike Lindell's allegations of Dominion rigging the presidential election has caused harm to Dominion's good reputation. However, Lindell did not seem to be worried. Rather, he said that he was very, very happy to learn of the lawsuit. He said, "I have all the evidence on them." Dominion's lawyers claim that Lindell's accusations have damaged their brand, also adding that Lindell sells the lie to this day because the lie sells pillows, quoting that MyPillow has grown 30 to 40% in sales. Lindell said that he still has a lot of evidence that hasn't been disclosed to this day, and that Dominion's lawsuit will only uncover more of the truth. He also denounced Dominion's accusations, saying that, quote, "They are the big lie." Prior to this lawsuit, Dominion filed similar lawsuits against attorney Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell. Giuliani said that the lawsuit was another act of intimidation by the hate-filled left wing to wipe out and censor the exercise of free speech. Another follow-up to our previous report. Facebook backed down from its news blackout in Australia. Mark Zuckerberg and Australian Federal Treasurer George Frydenberg reached an agreement on Tuesday morning. The newspaper The West Australian reports that Seven West Media and Facebook have signed an agreement to ensure that the tech giant pays for the use of the company's original news content and restores all Australian news pages on its platforms. Australian government introduces a world-first legislation forcing the tech giants, especially Google and Facebook, to pay local publishers for content. Thank you all for watching. That's all for today. We'll see you next time.